What's up, bankers?
Hello, bankers.
How's everybody doing?
How are you doing? Are you believing what you're seeing on the internet? Max Verstappen, Toto Wolff, in Sardinia. Didn't even know that was a place. Doctored photos, private jets, yachts. Max Verstappen, he's so fucking out of Red Bull, it's not even funny. Christian Horner, did he know? Didn't he know? What's really happening behind the scenes? There's so many questions that everyone in the F1 world wants to know right now. So we had to do an emergency episode, didn't we, Matt?
Yes. But now we are doing another emergency episode. We did an emergency episode.
Right.
Now we're doing another. We did an emergency episode with Gunther Steiner, but now we're doing another emergency episode.
Because the F1 world is in a state of emergency. So on the episode and on the pod today, we have commentator, journalist, podcaster, an F1 TV announcer for 20 years, the right-hand man to Martin Brundle in the good old days before Drive to Survive ruined everything. We've got James Allen, the president of Autosport Business and F1 at Motorsport Network. We got James Allen on the pod.
Great to see you guys. Thank you. What a build-up. I tell you what, that's incredible. Loving it. Loving your work.
That's the best part of the pod. So, yeah.
Are we done now?
Yeah, I mean that's our job done. Now your job is to tell us what the hell is going on here. Nobody knows anything. Christian Horner was surprised. They fired him to keep Max. They fired him because they're losing. Why doesn't this is the biggest administrative change in F1 history, and nobody knows anything. Not even Christian. Christian didn't know that these people that hate him wanted to fire him. Nothing makes sense. Make it make sense.
Is okay. I'll do my best. He certainly didn't see it coming, that's for sure. He was told the day before it became public. To the rest of us, we found out Wednesday morning. He was told on the Tuesday. It was a decision that was made by Red Bull's board. There's been the most important thing you need to know, I think, about this whole story is that there was a kind of a bit of a change of control situation whereby up until recently, the Thai family that were the founders of Red Bull. Do you know the backstory of this? Do you know what happened? So there was this guy who in Thailand used to make this drink that truck drivers had that kept them awake driving across Southeast Asia. And Dietrich Mateschitz was traveling there as a student, as a young man. And he tried some of this stuff, just thought, wow, this is so cool. I must take this back to Europe and keep everybody awake in nightclubs, and so they can drive down the freeways. And basically they formed the company together, but the majority of the shares were with the Thai family, not with Mateschitz. They let Mateschitz, because he's was a genius, they let him run everything, do whatever the hell he wanted, because it made them all very rich. But then he died. And I think the story of Christian Horner was he had obviously great support from Mateschitz while he was alive. He then died and everything started unraveling. And there's a whole backstory about how the Mateschitz tried to sell the team to Porsche. Did you know about that? Before Mateschitz died, because he was thinking about the future. Christian didn't want that to happen. He got the Thais on his side. They had the deciding vote. And at the beginning of last year, when Christian ran into some trouble internally, I'm sure you know all about that, with the complaints from one of the other employees, again, the Thais backed him at that point. What changed was in May, there was a change of control of 2% of that shareholding, which went into a trust. And it now means that the Thai family doesn't necessarily have the upper hand in all the decisions. So he didn't have their support at the crunch time here, which came after obviously a really difficult British Grand Prix for the team, on top of many other things. There was a row after the race between Max's dad, Jos, and Christian, witnessed by a number of people in Red Bull. And I'm not saying that led to him being removed 2 days later, but I think you have multiple reasons why this has come about, and I'm sure we'll get into it.
So I'm curious about this 2%, because I saw this being thrown around. The 2% going into the trust. Now, is that the 2%? Because from what I understand, this is of control of Red Bull, not just Red Bull Racing, of Red Bull as the organization. So are you saying that this 2% has now, like, that Red Bull, the drink company, has moved its ownership in a way because the racing team was getting out of hand, or were there other factors at play here with the business at large?
It's the bigger business. I mean, Red Bull Racing is probably worth, as a racing team, if you look at the valuations that are going on at the moment with some of the smaller teams, I reckon Red Bull Racing is probably worth about $3.5 to $4 billion. So you compare that with, like, the Dallas Cowboys is around about $9 billion now, some of the big NFL, NBA teams. So the valuations are really climbing up. So yes, it's a big business, but it's nothing like as big as the drinks business, energy drinks business. And yeah, I think what's happened is that the state of affairs that they had was not really good for the wider business. Mateschitz' son Mark inherited all of his dad's stake in it. And together with the Austrians, they've obviously got together and they've come up with a solution together with the son of that original Thai founder. He had that 2%. That was his. He inherited the 49 from his father, and that's why he had a 51% stake, and that's why he was able to sort of have the whip hand. So the exact details of how that works and how it will work for the whole drinks company, that's still to come out. But the key thing that people learned sort of middle to second half of last week was that this was one of the big things that happened behind the scenes that meant it had all changed.
So am I to believe that? Are we to believe that the 2% has moved to Austria? Basically,
it's not necessarily moved to Austria, but it's no longer sitting as a block with the Thai owner.
Was there a shift from the Thai side? Because from the outside in, you look at what happened last year with the internal investigation, with the scandal, with all that came with that, you'd say the time to fire him was then, but you deal with the kind of difficulty of keeping him and launching these internal investigations and hiring outside bodies and do all this stuff. You take the hit of sticking by him amidst all this, only to fire him a year and a half later. It's kind of like, you make
in
it
for a penny, in for a pound.
In for a penny, in for a pound. You make a bet. You kind of like you stick with your horse, especially if you've gone through all this stuff. I guess the question is, what changed here? Because there's now speculation that, was this because Max was going to leave? That they saw that Max was actually more valuable to Red Bull than Christian. That maybe feeling started to dawn on the Thai side, who had previously backed Christian, but under the performance this year, they kind of were done with him. It slowly eroded as opposed to like a kill shot.
A little bit. I think, picture the scene. Last spring, Christian goes to Shalem, the Thai owner, and says, "Listen, I know they want to sack me in Austria, but look at the last 19 years. The only reason this team has won is because of me. Or the main reason this team has won is because of me. I built this team. I put it all together. I've built your engines business, which is going to come on stream and is already running the engines that we're using at the moment. I'm the reason this team has been successful. Stick with me. There's more to come." And they believed him. 12 months later, you've lost Newey. You've lost Jonathan Wheatley. You've lost Will Courtney, who was one of the strategy guys that calls the race strategy. He's going to go to McLaren as a sporting director. Potentially, you had a few other people who were lining up to hand their notice in second half of this season. You then, of course, had Max. And I think, if anything, if this season has proved anything, it's that the reason that Red Bull are winning is Max. Or why they're competitive is Max. And so he's been able to prove that this year. So I think that also changed. So that argument wasn't as convincing as it was 12 months ago. And that's one of the reasons why it didn't work this time around.
I guess it's an interesting thought, though, because it's like, yes, of course, you could look at this season and obviously say Max Verstappen is the reason they're winning. But he's talked about how, who knows how long he wants to be in this sport. He obviously has eyes on other seats or whatever seat is going to suit him at the time. At one point, Christian really was the guy who was able to get Adrian Newey to come to Red Bull, who was able to build this team. Is the sense that, like, he kind of maybe through the chaos of the last year and a half lost his ability to did he lose the team? Is that what happened? Has he lost? People used to flock to him and now they, run away from him? Is that the sense of what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have this expression in the US sports, but when in soccer here or football here in the UK, if a manager kind of loses the dressing room, they call it, it means the players don't really believe the locker room. Yeah, loses the locker room. The players don't believe in him anymore, and therefore that's quite often the time when the board decide to get rid of the manager and get a new manager. And I think a little bit of that has happened. That's my understanding. So part of it is the performance, because if we forget about Max for a second, who's like an extraterrestrial, and we look at what's going on in the other car, Liam Lawson, we all know, much as we love Liam Lawson, he wasn't able to get a tune out of it. Put Yuki in, who I know you guys are both big Yuki fans, right? And allegedly you have a statue
We're
of him.
Objective journalists.
We
report the facts.
We call balls and strikes. That's what we do,
There you go. Well, anyway, I know for a fact that you two are both Yuki fans, and but I'm sorry to say that he's only got 7 points. Right, so if his teammate was on the same sort of strike rate as Yuki, then Red Bull would be in deep doo-doo. So it's clearly the car is not competitive.
Oh, hypotheticals are pointless. It's a pointless exercise to do that. I get so. Do you think that as talented as Christian is, do you believe that this scandal, that these allegations, whatever their veracity, have damaged him? He's a sort of a distressed asset now.
In whose eyes?
In the eyes of the eyes of his own team,
or the paddock.
In the
definitely in both cases, I would say yes. But of course, his record is his record. He's won 8 drivers and 6 constructors championships. I think 124 Grand Prix wins. As a team boss of a single team, it's got to be a record. I don't think anybody else has. I mean, maybe Jean Todt. I'd have to look at the numbers. Toto Wolff has done pretty well also, but it's up there, right, there amongst the best ever. So he's got a great track record, but for sure. Obviously he's always denied these allegations. There's been 2 internal investigations, et cetera, but it led directly for sure to some departures. And if you remember Jos Verstappen last year, at the beginning of the season, after that it all blew up in Bahrain, he actually said, Christian staying here is going to cause this team to fall apart, and he would say that he's been proved right.
It's hard to parse these things. How much of these departures we don't know how much of these departures are because of Christian, and how much is just the natural. These people just need to go somewhere. I mean, that's a natural. I mean, when Mercedes was winning, they hemorrhaged talent. The people get promoted. They get paid more money to go elsewhere. I'm sure with the cost cap, that process of getting promoted elsewhere is accelerated. Right. So it's really hard to say. I mean, what was confusing to me was I'm like, oh, yeah, he definitely lost the locker room. And then maybe this is a bit of a I don't know what you think of who leaked this photo of him getting this 5-minute standing ovation from his troops. I'm like, well, that doesn't look like he lost the locker room. Right. So, but maybe that's just, he hasn't lost the locker room of the 9 people who are still left. But see, so I mean, it's just hard for me to parse. I mean, I don't know if you could help us make sense of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big machine, right? I mean, a Formula One team is a big machine, and he certainly had a lot of people who owe him, a lot, because they've not only had a great job for a number of years, but all the winning they've done, they get bonuses. I'm sure you're aware that the team, if they win a constructors championship, you can buy a car with the bonus you get from winning a constructors championship. So they have a lot to be thankful for him. But at the same time, this is a very, very competitive business. Someone like Jonathan Wheatley he's roughly the same age as me. I think he's a year younger than me, something like that. We've been in the sport roughly the same amount of time. I've known him the whole way through. And he's at that point now he's in mid-50s where he's thinking, right, I'm ready to be a team principal. I'm ready to step up. And he wanted to do that. He'd like to have done it at Red Bull. Arguably, he got his timing a bit wrong, because if he'd stuck around for another sort of 6 months, he may well be the Red Bull team principal now. But he's doing a good job at Sauber. I know you were big Hulkenberg fans as well as big Yuki fans, and you were pretty happy about what happened at Silverstone with his podium. And Jonathan's definitely gone there and shown, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that he's been able to really nail, So that's what does happen. So you're right, Matt. In that sense, there is always growth that comes along. And what Christian was, to be fair to him, what he's been really good at is holding that team together. He had like 30, 40 guys who were on contracts that were all kind of, renew it, 3-5 year contracts and keeping renewing them over and over and over again. People like Rob Marshall, Adrian Newey, Jonathan Wheatley, the key people. He held that group together for a very, very long time. But then Rob Marshall, obviously, was the first one. He went off to McLaren, and he's had a big say in why that McLaren is going fast now. It's never one person anymore like it used to be in the old days, but he has had a big say in why McLaren are doing well.
I want to go back to the Jos Verstappen of it all, because obviously he said that last year as everything came out. If Christian stays, it's going to destroy the team. Those feel like prophetic words now at this point. But it does seem like the bad blood between the two of them started long before, preseason testing of 2020 of the 2024 season. Can you? I mean, Red Bull was flying high. They gave Max this chance. There's the Helmut Marko side of things. Like, there's a Game of Thrones element to what it feels like happened over at Red Bull. There's a succession element. The patriarch dies, chaos ensues. Everyone's grabbing for influence and power. Like, when was it how toxic? Like, it feels like Dietrich was just like this dam. He was just like holding up. He was like the Hoover Dam. That's kind of what it feels like. Dietrich was doing. He was holding. Seems like Dietrich was just holding this whole thing together. And the second that he goes, everyone's trying to kill each other. That's what. Like, where did the bad blood begin?
Yeah.
I love that characterization, Brian. That's so cool. It's like someone a few months ago said to me, they said something similar and said, Formula One, it's so cool. It's like Shakespeare on wheels. You've got this success, you've got these feuds, you've got this blood. And it's true. And this is a perfect example of it. Yes, absolutely. And I think when you have a really powerful figure like that, because let's not forget, this is a complete fantasy, this whole thing, right? I mean, who creates an energy drink? Who creates a whole new sector out of nothing? Who builds it all on marketing? Who then decides he's going to spend the marketing dollars on like speed, anything to do with speed, jumping off a mountain in bat wings,
right.
Riding a motorbike instead of surfing, having a paddle instead of a rear wheel that powers a KTM motocross bike across the sea. I mean, who sends a guy jumping out of a capsule in space, and parachuting to Earth? All this stuff came out of his imagination. And running a Formula One team, in fact, running 2 Formula One teams, was all a complete figment of his imagination. He came into Formula One and he beat Ferrari, he beat McLaren, he beat Williams, he beat Mercedes repeatedly, and he brought through these amazing young talents, including Max Verstappen, who I first met when he was 17 years old, and Helmut Marko, he found him, and he's like, here we go, this is the next kid, and I remember the first time I saw Max, the first time I clocked what made Max special was at Monaco. And I'm sure guys, you can go to, if you've got the right credential, you can go and stand by the swimming pool in Monaco. And you can stand right next to the barriers when they come through the first part, 130 plus miles an hour, right on the limit. And Max's hands on the steering wheel, you could see them. It's like watching a really good quarterback. He just seems to have an extra half second or a second on the ball before he releases the pass. Other quarterbacks just don't have that, and that's what makes them special. They see it, they see the picture where they're going to send the ball. Max's hands is so fast compared to everybody else. Schumacher had something very similar. And you see it, and you go, okay, I've got it now. And on top of all that, he's got this rock-hard mentality. He's got this dad who's basically bred him for success and is ruthless in the pursuit of success. So now you find yourself in a situation where the boss man, is no longer there. Everybody else is fighting like rats in a sack across the whole business, not just in the race team. And all that Jos cares about is ultra high performance. And all his son, Max, cares about now, because he's experienced, he's a champion, a multiple champion, is ultra high performance. That just doesn't mean a very fast car. It means making sure you put the right fuel in it, making sure that when they come in for tires, they're ready and they're on my car and I'm back gone again in 2 seconds, not 2.5 seconds, and certainly not 5 seconds, and certainly not having a tire ready, and certainly not any of the things that started to creep in the last few years. And that is what Jos is all about. And on top of that, yes, you had a personality clash with Christian that evolved and got worse in the last 18 months.
I guess my question is, was Christian Horner not in lockstep with that? Was there a sense that he was, Christian Horner, Drive to Survive happens, right? You guys did a survey however a huge percentage of fans, all the new fans watch Christian Horner. He's a star. He's doing the one-on-ones. He's looking into the camera. He's saying all the punchy things. Was there a little bit maybe that Christian Horner was getting the fame get to his head? Did he abandon the hard-nosed racer mentality that the Yasses and the helmets and the Maxes of the world have? Was that at all an element of it?
Do you think you just answered your own question in the question, Brian? I think you might have done. I mean,
so he's lost the plot.
He's wow. You know, he Toto, all these guys, Zach, they arrive at a racetrack now and they get as big a cheer as the drivers did 5 years ago. This is a very different level of celebrity now, and you start to play a character, you start to play a persona, and you start to do that in everything that you do. And in the Drive to Survive plot, Christian's the antagonist, isn't he? He's the one. He has a kind of, he's developed this snarl. It's not quite an Elvis Presley snarl. It's more of a kind of get out of my way. I'm the king of the world snarl. And so he's got that. He's developed that persona. Did it go to his head? Did he become arrogant, as some people have said on the internet, as some people have said in the sport as well? Unnamed team principals in lots of articles in the last week said, oh, well, he was he became very arrogant and thought it was all about him and all that sort of thing. So I'm not saying that for a moment. I'm just saying that it's easy to get drawn into those kind of things. And it's easy for these guys to sort of lose a little bit perspective. Don't forget also, I think, when you do the same job for 20 years, I mean, if you guys are still doing this podcast in 20 years' time, you'll be like looking for fresh sources of inspiration, right? And motivation to really keep it going. And money's one thing, but you need to, it's hard to keep an organization of 1,000 people on the bubble all the time, year after year. So you put all that together in the mix and you've got the situation that we've got today.
But I would argue that this character that he plays, this profile that he's built for himself, was an asset to
Formula One.
To Formula One, but also to Verstappen specifically. I mean, he became the lightning rod. He became, I've said this before, he became the Johnny Cochran to whatever crimes Max committed, right? And he would be out there and he would say, this is BS, fake news. Max never did anything wrong. And he was out there just taking whatever, lightning strikes would come, and he would direct it all at him. And maybe, I mean, it's a fine line between diverting attention for good or for narcissism. But I think largely, I don't know if Max completely appreciates what he had in Christian going to the mat for him all the time. So, I'm just struggling to think about. Maybe they don't really know what they're losing in him to some extent. Like, do they really think that Toto the billionaire is gonna get on all fours like Christian did and bark like a rabid dog? I just don't see that.
It's a really interesting question, Matt. And I to be honest with you, I think the answer is yes. I mean, what we're talking about here is the best of the best in Formula One. And in my experience over 35 years in this sport, basically, you put the shirt on with the badge. You have your team of people, including your drivers. If you've got a little bit of controversial driver, then it's certainly the case. And you defend them, And if people criticize them, you come out and you defend them. That's the way it works in Formula One, particularly if they're winning. If they're not winning, and if they're sort of, losing you ground, then that's a different matter. And you can lose faith and maybe start to have a few doubts, and maybe the messaging goes a bit soft. But generally speaking, if you've got a driver of that caliber who's performing for you and winning for you. I remember Jean Todt, right? Jean Todt arrived, I knew him beforehand when he was at Peugeot in the sports cars. He won Le Mans 24 Hours with Peugeot. He wore a Peugeot shirt. He would go through a brick wall for Peugeot. A few months later, he turns up in a Ferrari shirt. He would go through a brick wall for Ferrari. He would deny everything. He would stand up for them. He would defend Schumacher absolutely to the hilt. He would swap the cars around on the last lap of the Austrian Grand Prix, 5 races into a championship, and say this had to happen and defend that to the hilt. And then guess what? He turns up at the FIA as president wearing an FIA shirt, and he would go through a brick wall for the FIA, and he'd give Ferrari a hard time. That's the way these guys are.
I guess we can switch over to the Max side of things now, because there's rumors that they were, both in Sardinia. Their yachts were seen. There's some doctored photos of them on a tarmac together. Those are fake news. There's a fake news. But it seems obviously Max's eyes have shifted towards Mercedes and Toto. I do want to push back maybe a little bit because and we're newer in the sport than you are. But sometimes a fresh perspective can bring something interesting. To us, it feels like Toto is a little bit more of a man of kind of like, well, if it was wrong, then we shouldn't fight. And, Max was in the wrong there, so we actually aren't going to make a fuss. Whereas Christian, who was someone was like, I don't care. Who gives a fuck? Like, if I can win, that's all I care about. I think if 2021 happens to Max and not to Toto, I don't know if he's like, they protested it, but I don't know if they went as hard as Christian would have gone had the Michael Massey situation happened on the other side of the coin. I guess I'm curious about this aspect of it. Christian was comfortable playing the heel. Christian was comfortable being the antagonist, being the villain. It maybe feels like Max and Jos aren't that comfortable playing that role. Do you feel like maybe there's an element of this, like Toto's the good guy? Look at Mercedes. They're the good guys. They do the right thing, and everyone sees them as being like morally superior in some way. They wear the buttoned-up white shirts. They're the good guys to the bad guys of Red Bull. Now, what's interesting is Max does a lot of stuff that kind of leans towards being a heel. Like, some of his behavior is actually heel-like. And do you feel like maybe there's an element of this thing where it's like kind of an anti-hero wanting to be a hero? And like, oh, if I go over with that camp, then all of a sudden I can get a little bit of that, like, I don't know, good PR. I don't get booed at F175. I don't get, like, is that an element of this whole thing?
Yeah, you've got some. I love your characterizations of these situations, Brian. It's really cool. And I don't know how much you know about the some of the history of the sport, but you go back to the 1990s, and that what you've just described is a very similar scenario to what happened to Michael Schumacher, who was the best driver of his time in the 90s, and he was driving for Benetton, which is basically the team that is today Alpine. So it was built in that same. They're operating out of the same factory just outside Oxford in England, and it was run by Flavio Briatore at the time, and they had a few cheating allegations going on in 1994. Things like they took the filters out of the fuel thing in the days when we had refueling and there was a big fire. Guess who it happened to? Max's dad, Jos Verstappen, was in the middle of the fire. Right. Then Schumacher got disqualified for a couple of races, and there was a floor irregularity.
The software bullshit.
Oh, exactly.
Like
all the stuff about
control.
It was the year after. Right. It was the year after all that stuff had been banned, and they found a way of activating the launch control in the Benetton. And then, of course, it was an unbelievable, tumultuous season anyway, because Senna passed away and Roland Ratzenberger tragically. So yeah, it was.
And
but anyway, the point is,
Michael crashed into some people. It wasn't just the team. Michael was doing some shady stuff as well.
Sure, exactly. But he needed to get away from that, exactly as you've just characterized it. Ferrari in '95, Ferrari came to him and said, "Look, come to Ferrari, make Ferrari great again," to coin a phrase, and he took the challenge. A big part of the reason he took the challenge, even though he could see they were really uncompetitive, he was going to struggle, certainly for the first year or two, which he did, was because it gave him a chance to clean up his image and get away from something that... So I'm not saying that's where Max is today, because I'm not saying that Red Bull today and Benetton of 1994 is comparable. But I think there is an element with Max that he's said at times that he'd love to do his whole career with one team, but you would say that, wouldn't you? A lot of sports people say that. I'm a big Liverpool fan. Trent Alexander-Arnold said that, and he's gone off to Real Madrid. That you go where the money is, you go where the opportunities are. But if I was advising Max, this is not the moment to move. Toto's trying really hard to get him, and has been trying really hard to get him for a year, and obviously feels he has a chance because he's keeping the whole door open with George Russell, and all the rest of it. But a few things on that. The first one is, if I was advising Max, I would say to him, yes, everybody, around that Silicon Valley in England, they all talk to each other. So the people in Mercedes engines know how good their engine is, and the people in Red Bull engines know how not good their engine is, and they can compare that, and they talk in the pubs in the evening, because they all used to work together, right? And they've all moved between each other many times. It's a small world, and the general feeling is that the Red Bull engine is going to be down a little bit next year. So Max is looking at 24 races where chances are he'll be in a similar situation to where he is today. Maybe even worse, not really able to race with whoever the fastest car is next year. bear in mind, it's a complete rule change, so we don't know at the moment, even though Lando seems very confident they're going to have a great car next year. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're Toto, you're going to have to go from a situation where you're paying George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, who's doing it for kind of like, pocket change and some meal tokens. You're going to put another $80 to $100 million on your bottom line, cut your profits down and all the rest of it. So that's a big, big decision. He'd love to have him, but if I think he has to be sure that he really needs him. And Max, more importantly, has to know that Mercedes is the team to be with for the next 3 years. Because it could be, if he stays where he is, sucks it up next year, doesn't win too much, has a look and actually likes what he sees from Honda, Adrian Newey, Aston Martin, that maybe he just goes there and takes Alonso's seat for 27 and commits himself for 3 years and tries to make that into a winning package, because Lawrence Stroll will pay him whatever he wants to go and do that, and maybe even give him some shares like he gave to Newey. So you don't, if you're Max Verstappen, you're the best driver in the world right now by a margin. You don't need to move now. If you do move now, then it is an act of faith. It's a big leap, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. I suspect he will not move before next year. If he does, it's a big leap of faith.
The irony is, if I'm a team boss and I think I have a rocket ship, I don't need Max Verstappen, right? Max wants to go to a place with a rocket ship, but ironically, if I know I got the McLaren of this year, next year, I don't need Max.
Exactly.
With Oscar and Lando or George, I'll be good. The car is good enough that I can win with those guys. It's actually, ironically, when you know you have a kind of good car where you need Max. Like Max can drag a B+ to an A and maybe steal a championship like he did in 21. And honestly, 2024, he stole that one a little bit. So it's interesting. Max might want a rocket ship, but the people that want, like if I'm Toto and I think I have a rocket ship, I'm like, why do I need him? But he seems to want him. And it's just kind of an interesting arrangement that if I'm Toto and next year I'm just dominating, I'm like, why do I need this headache next year?
If Toto's got a really good engine next year, which is what happened in 2014, the difference is that he's going to have a competitor who's using the same engine as him, which is McLaren, who are currently comfortably the fastest car. So for them to lift themselves up, they're going to have to make a step with next year's chassis side in order to take on McLaren. And McLaren are in a great position because they're using the Mercedes engine, which people think is going to be competitive. But I think the Honda should be competitive as well. From if you look at the nature of the engine, the Honda should be pretty good. So, it's as I say, I don't think Max needs to jump now. The time to be ready to move is the end of 26. That's the moment to be. And if you're George, maybe you could go to Aston Martin now and say, look, I'm being yanked about here, so I can come to you. I'll commit now for 3 years to you. Take it or leave it. Do you want to do this? And if you're Lawrence, you say, oh, okay, well, let me have a think about that, because it's a longer shot for him to get Max than it is for Toto to get Max.
Okay, so what do you make, though, of them yachting together, them vacationing together? This is what people are saying. I mean,
that's what happens in Formula One.
That's it.
Sardinia,
Toto and Max hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, people find themselves in the same place. Sometimes they do it for mischief. Sometimes they do it, it just happens by coincidence. Often, there's less to these things than there appears. I'm not saying there's nothing to it, but I mean, the point is, if Toto wants to talk to Max, he can talk to him any day of the week. They live within about a kilometer of each other in Monaco. They can go and have coffee. They can go to each other's apartment. They don't need to take a boat all the way down to Sardinia in order to have a conversation. They could do it whenever they want to. So it's really, it's just one of those things. I think the other point that we haven't made yet is that Max has got more stuff in his life now than he had a few years ago. I mean, a couple of years ago, really all there was in his life was racing Formula One cars, racing on esports, and his girlfriend and her daughter that he was kind of helping to raise. Now he's got his own kid, and he's got a lot of money. He's got a racing team that he likes driving the GT cars for. Red Bull let him do that, right? They're perfectly happy to they don't put too much pressure on him in terms of doing promotional stuff. He's a lot freer now. He's a lot freer than he would be if he drove for any of the other teams, because they'd make more demands on his time. and he can do what the hell he wants with his GT team and all that sort of stuff. So you get the feeling with Max that he's kind of, his life is becoming a little bit more, nothing to like Lewis Hamilton's life, which has got so many layers of complexity. It's a different world altogether. But he's becoming a more rounded person, I think. And so this is a really important move for Max, this next one, because this is what's going to define whether he becomes one of the greats or whether he's kind of Sebastian Vettel, Alain Prost. Great drivers, of course they were, but is he going to get to Lewis's 6-7 championships? And Schumacher? Is he going to be in that space? And sometimes you need a fresh challenge as well, fresh motivation to find those things.
You spoke about Michael going to Ferrari and that being a new challenge, and Jean Todt wearing a Ferrari badge and running through a wall for Ferrari, and having a guy that runs through a wall for his team. But maybe this is a misconception, but I seem to think that from Max's POV and Jas's POV, that their team boss needs to wear a Max Verstappen badge and run through a wall for him. It's a one-car team. Like, I don't see Jas and Max being cool with what Lando's going through in McLaren, being cool with what being even cool with what Lewis went through at Mercedes. Like, oh, we're bringing this guy George. Oh, I kind of prefer Valtteri Bottas. No, George. The way Toto even treated Lewis, the great Lewis Hamilton, leaves me doubts that he's going to achieve that level of cult of personality that he has at Red Bull. I doubt that it's going to work to that level. Like, I really think this is the grass is greener on the other side situation. I really think they're in for a rude awakening if they think that they're going to get a better treatment from anywhere other than Red Bull.
That's a really interesting observation. Again, it reminds me of Schumacher, right? A lot of people thought Schumacher needed to be in a team where he was the undisputed top dog and the other guy drove for him and team owners would come in. And there was an element of that, definitely. Michael was always about turning every single competitive advantage in his favor, even to the sort of detriment. And to be fair, Ferrari at the time, they operated on the basis that they really, really wanted to win the Drivers' Championship, and it was all about that. And Michael was their guy. They were paying him many, many times more than they were ever paying whoever sat in the other car alongside him. I think the world's changed a little bit now. I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I think Max probably knows and certainly feels that he could beat anybody in the same car. And, he's not in the position he's in because he's imposed any kind of rules on everybody. He's in the position he's in because he was faster than Ricciardo, he was faster than Sainz, he was faster than the other people, that Yuki and everybody else that's raced alongside him, and Perez. He's just better. He's just faster. And the other thing is, if you're a team boss, someone like Zach has got a great situation there because he's got Piastri, who's 24 years old. And he's paying him well, but he's not paying him like crazy money. He's got Lando, he's not paying him crazy money either. But if you've got Max Verstappen, who is on crazy money, and you put someone else alongside him who's also on crazy money, again, I keep coming back to this, it's going to hit your profit. I mean, these guys are in the business of actually turning a profit now out of these race teams. They're not just bottomless pits anymore. And so you're going to pair him with somebody who's not going to stir him up. That's what Max wants. All Max cares about is his teammate isn't political. That's all he cares about, because he'll back himself to beat whoever you put in the other car.
So George Russell is obviously the perfect teammate for him then. At Mercedes.
Well, we'd all love to see that, wouldn't we?
Heaven.
Yeah, that would be expensive,
we
but
would. Yeah.
And Carlos Sainz had no beef with each other when they were together.
They did a bit, but I mean, it was a different time. They were much younger then. So, but yes, they didn't. And in fact, of course, Carlos didn't stick around, right? Carlos got out of there.
Now you've been in this game and around this world for a very long time. I'm curious, within this aspect of things, the shift a little bit that's happening of kind of corporate teams versus more of the old school. And it feels like when Mateschitz was running things at Red Bull, it had more of that old school feel. He would write blank checks. He gave people full power and autonomy to do what they needed to do to just win races. That's all they cared about. It seems like the shift that's been happening at Red Bull is actually to go more corporate, to actually be a little bit more conscious of the fact that it's an extension of the Red Bull brand, that, that there's actually going to be a little bit more checks and balances and red tape. And we've seen what that can do to a team. We've seen what happens at Ferrari. Feels like there's 45 cooks in every kitchen. And, even at times it feels like maybe Mercedes is a little bit more on that, even though they have the separation and Toto's part of, is part owner. I'm curious if you feel like there is, because it feels like, these are the three decisions in front of Max in the next couple of years. There's Red Bull, there's Mercedes, and there's potentially Aston Martin down the road. Aston Martin feels like it's the most similar to the old school, just break things. They showed it. People were talking when Adrian Newey left. Is he going to go to Ferrari? Adrian Newey looked at Ferrari and said, no, screw that. I'm going to go to a place that's going to give me, empower me to do what I do. Do you think that a place like Aston Martin actually, vibes-wise, and in terms of how they are planning to conduct themselves going forward, is actually more appealing to someone like Max?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the way I look at these things is, and it always has been the case, is that a lot of these racing teams were kind of entrepreneurial, right? That's what made them special. People like Frank Williams, they set up a team, they ran it in an entrepreneurial way, and Mateschitz ran Red Bull in a really entrepreneurial way. And then you have teams that are part like an extension of a road car manufacturer, like Toyota was back in the day, and BMW when they came in. And they ran it, they had the wrong mentality, because you can't win anything in Formula One if you approach it from a kind of a corporate mentality. You've got to have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I think you're onto something there, that Mercedes, the reason why Mercedes did the structure the way they did, where Toto's a 25% shareholder, he's now 30-something percent shareholder.
I think. Yeah,
33% shareholder, but he was originally 25. Is so that you would have that entrepreneurial spirit at the heart of the thing. You wouldn't be making corporate decisions. And I think that's absolutely right. And with Aston Martin, Lawrence Stroll runs things, he's a very strong personality, but he wants to have that entrepreneurial spirit. It's an engineer-led organization. Andy Cowell is the team boss there. I've known him for many, many years. He is an engineer. He's an engine builder, but he thinks like an engineer. And Adrian Newey definitely thinks like an engineer, and so do all the people around them. So I think Max would find that kind of mentality appealing, and the fact that one guy can make the decisions, which is what Mateschitz was at Red Bull. Lawrence Stroll can say, "You want that car painted orange tomorrow? I'll paint it orange." He'll do whatever it takes to win, and only one guy needs to make the decision ultimately and write the check for it, right? So I think there is an element to that for sure, but there's still that spirit in Mercedes as well. As long as Toto's around running that team, it'll be the same.
But I mean, if we're just going by, if every team principal was held to the standard that Christian was, the allegations aside, this is performance. I mean, every team principal is getting fired. I mean, Jesus Christ, the guy won 1 million championships, 100 plus races, and he's got one and a half off year, actually half an off year. I mean, he won the drivers' championship last year, and they're kicking him. They're kicking him down the road. What do you think his future job prospects are?
Well, I think he can do. He can definitely come back if he wants to. I mean, right now he's still on the payroll at Red Bull Racing, and he mentioned that in that video you mentioned. About him sort of signing off with the workforce at Red Bull the other day. So what we're not clear on is how long that's going to be, whether it's a case of gardening leave or, I mean, he's on a very big salary. So, I mean, I don't know if he's had time really to reflect. I imagine he wants to take the summer to kind of think about what he's going to do next. I know that Ferrari were trying to get him. Originally, they were trying to get him and Newey, and then that didn't work. But more recently, they've been sort of sounding him out about maybe going there. But John Elkann, the boss man at Ferrari, came out the other day after the Horner was sacked, saying he's not coming here, even though Fred Vasseur may well not last beyond the end of this season as a team boss. It won't be Horner that replaces him in 2026. My hunch, if he comes back to Formula One, it would be in a team where he would be a shareholder, because he looks across at Toto and he's jealous of the fact that he's a shareholder. He's jealous of the fact that Adrian Newey got a shareholding for going to Aston Martin. So it would need to be maybe buying Alpine with some Qatari investors or something, and being a shareholder of that and building that into a team, or maybe one of the others. But I don't think he would do a job again now where he was just an employee. I think he would need to have some skin in the game. He's relatively young. He's still only in his early 50s. He's made a lot of money, but his pride will be hurt by this. I don't think we've had the final word from Christian in Formula One.
Well, I heard Otmar Safnauer is trying to get a team on the grid. I mean, if Christian tried to get his team on the grid, I think Otmar might be.
Starting from scratch is a very different thing from coming into something that's already kind of 3/4 cooked, and you just know how to sprinkle the magic on it and attract the engineers. The lead times in F1 are very long. Cadillac will find this next year. They're being very aggressive in the marketplace with their recruitment and what have you. But it's to start a Formula One team from scratch is a big undertaking.
Christian did it. Why don't they hire him?
Well, that was 20 years ago. It was a bit more simple then.
All right.
Yeah, when you had like a couple of hundred people in a Formula One team 20 years ago, now you've got 1,000. And, it's a lot of money as well. So maybe he will. I mean, there's, Ben Sulayem's trying to say that there's some Chinese, there's an opportunity to have a Chinese 12th team. Maybe he would do that. But maybe he would. I don't know. That's a whole other level of undertaking, from taking over a team that's not performing at the top level and taking them to the top.
Feels like Alpine might be the team that is available to do that right now, and especially if Flavio sticks around, or if Flavio remains, a part of that fold, they feel like they would be kindred spirits in a way, Flavio and Christian, to some extent.
Well, I mean, Renault got a new CEO coming in at some point soon, and I don't think they're going to make any decisions. Again, I don't think they're going to make any decisions until that person comes in. But Flavio's, I think his interest ultimately is in selling that team. That he'll make, a good chunk of change once he brokers that team to whoever the new buyer is going to be. And, if you were Christian, you'd certainly be thinking about getting some money men behind you, and whether they're US or Qatari or a combination of all that, or some other part of the Middle East that wants to get a piece of the action. And, if you go along and say, oh, by the way, I'm Christian Horner, I've won all these races, would you like me to come in as a shareholder and build this into a winning outfit quickly? Then I think he'd definitely get a good audience with a lot of people, wouldn't you?
I think so. All right,
Yeah.
Well, we've gotten a sense of this world. We've gotten a sense of where what you think is to happen, or where the chess pieces lie on the board. I want to come back to just one thing. I think about Max Verstappen, and I think about, what does he want? Because, you even said there, is his legacy going to be that he has 4 championships and he's a Vettel or a Prost, or does he really want the greatness? And what does that mean? Where does that go? I guess you've known him since he was 17 years old. There feels like there's maybe competing elements of it. There's what Jos wants versus what Max wants. Max talks about wanting to leave Formula One at a young age. He doesn't want to stay in it forever. That he has kind of, there seems to be an aspiration for like a good life, and sometimes Formula One can get in the way of that. I guess, as he makes this decision, I guess I'm like, what is it, to be the greatest of all time, or is it to kind of like do things the way that he wants to do them? Because sometimes those things are at odds.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. And people have different. I've always asked drivers, what is it that you really, really want? I remember asking Alonso this once when he was about 23 or 24. You know what he said? He said, I want all the other drivers to look at me and say, he's the best. Most of them just say, what do you think I want? I want to win a world championship. Are you crazy? I want to win 3 world championships. Right. I want to win many world championships. Alonso, I love that. He was so honest. He was so frank, right? I just want everyone else to look at me and say, he's the best. I suspect Max wouldn't say that, but I suspect that that would be a big thing for Max. And I think most of the drivers would look at him right now and say, he's the best. I think, he's only ever known a world where he's competing. Yes, it's nice to have the money, but he wants to be competitive. He likes the challenge of competing against other people. So, he's up against some tough competitors. I think he feels he's probably got Norris where he wants him, but I don't think he feels he's got Piastri where he wants him. And as Piastri matures, if he carries on the way he is, I think that's quite an adversarial battle. But then again, if Norris deserves, if Norris finds some teeth and gets stuck into Max a bit more as we go forward, then those will all be good battles. So, these are competitors. Being at a high level like this and turning it on year after year is really, really hard. But, at the end of the day, it's the sport, right? It's the sport that really counts. It's the sport that we all love as well. Interestingly, Brian, you mentioned earlier on about, we do this global fan survey, which we do every 4 years with Formula One. What was really interesting to me was that one of the interesting things we did, it was launched a couple of weeks ago, was that whether you're a long-standing fan who's been following this sport for 30 years or you're someone who came in through Drive to Survive, the most important thing to you is the sport, right? How you consume it is very, very different. Obviously, younger ones follow you. They look at TikTok. They do all that kind of stuff. And the older ones find it in different ways. But at the heart of it all is the sport. And that's what we're all talking about here today. That's what we all love. It's why we're still doing all this. And that's what Max is in it for, right? He loves the sport. He loves everything about it. And the day he doesn't love it anymore, I've no doubt, like Niki Lauda before him, like a whole bunch of drivers, he'll just exit, and that'll be the end of it.
Speaking of talking about a sport, used to be running mates with Martin Brundle at ITV. Used to be a commentator.
Yeah,
got to hear some Martin Brundle stories. Tell me, what is he as sassy behind the camera as he is in front of it?
He's a very smart operator. I've known Martin. Well, we go back even further than that because my first job in Formula One. In the early 1990s. I started in 1990. And in 1991, I was working in, basically my first job was basically the comms. I was doing the comms for this team that was at the back of the grid called Brabham. They were kind of like Sauber is today, but worse. And they had been great. Now, Nelson Piquet had won 3 world championships with them. Yeah. So they had been great. Bernie Ecclestone had owned it, but this was different times. And we had a Yamaha engine in 1991. And guess who the drivers were? Martin Brundle was one of them. That's the first time I worked with him. And we got on really, really well and had a great year. And then we found ourselves being teammates at ITV. I started out as a pit announcer. And then when this legendary commentator called Murray Walker retired, legendary announcer, I took his place. And Martin and I were basically worked together for 12 years. On television, 8 years standing side by side in an announcer's booth, and we had a great body language between us. We called the races. We like to think that we were kind of in the moment. We were kind of anticipating what was going to happen, and then kind of reading the stories of what happened and stuff like that. And it was an exciting time. Yeah, is he a sassy behind the camera? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's he's a racer. He thinks like a racer, and everything is always about looking for an edge and always like looking for the new thing. So that's one of the reasons he and I got on so well, is because I'm always in from a storytelling point of view. I'm always about what's next, and he's always like that as well as a racer. He wanted the next thing, and he was up against some tough teammates, right? I mean, he raced with Michael Schumacher. He raced. He had some very, very tough teammates, and he brought that into his broadcast career. And obviously, it's a number of years ago now, and he's evolved into the guy you hear today. But he's always got the right line, though. He's never ever not got the right line. My favorite Martin line was when he very early on when he was explaining G-force, and he said, "G-force is the force that makes your granny swap seats in the back of the car when you go too fast around a corner."
Do you have a particular race, or like is there one race that comes to mind that you guys called together that, like, if you think back on your time together, like this one really stood out?
There's 3. If you'll indulge me, there's 3. The first one was the infamous race in Indianapolis where only 6 cars took the start. Mm-hmm. So you imagine you've got 90 minutes of television ahead of you, and you've only got 6 cars to talk about. But we were pretty. That's
how we feel after when there's a really boring race. We're like, how are we going to fill this fucking hour? I can't imagine having to actually call the race. That's a whole other ballgame.
And then you had the fans throwing bottles onto the track because they were so annoyed with what had happened. So that was the first one. The second one was the amazing race in Suzuka where I think there'd been a storm and various other crazy things that happened during the weekend, with the upshot being that the really, really fast guys were at the back of the field. So you had Schumacher, Alonso and Raikkonen coming through the field from the back, and Fisichella was at the front in the Renault. And basically they caught him, and Raikkonen caught and passed Fisichella on the last lap. It was brilliant race. And Alonso went round the outside of Schumacher at 130R corner, which in those days was much more dangerous than it is today. It was one of the bravest things I think I've ever seen, and we absolutely nailed that race. But I think the best one has to be, Hamilton's first world title, the last corner of the last lap in the Brazil Grand Prix, and
Yes.
it was a day of high jeopardy.
Glock?
Is that Glock? Yes, that's
Yes.
Glock. Yes, it is. And all that stuff. Yeah,
That's
because
right.
it was a day of high jeopardy for the drivers, but it was a day of very high jeopardy for the commentators too, because it was so easy to make a mistake. And we were across it. We got each other through it. I remember opening the commentary box door to see how much harder the rain was coming down, because Glock and Trulli on the Toyotas were still on dry weather tires. So the more it rained, the slower they were going to go, and Hamilton had a chance of catching them. So we were just absolutely on it that day, and we won an award for it. That one just behind me, you can't see it. There we go. That one, that silver one, and
wow.
amongst a number of awards, actually, we won for that. It was a great day. So, but I think that was a special commentary. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to hear more from James, he has his own podcast, James Allen on F1, streaming everywhere that you get your podcasts. And this was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you. And we're talking, and I'm hearing you speak, and the more I'm hearing the clips, I'm hearing is that Glock, and it was an honor to do this with you, man. So appreciate.
Well, likewise,
and
I'm a big
more to come on this situation. Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm a big fan of what you guys do. I must get you on mine as well. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But thank you very much for having me, and it's a great pleasure. And good luck with it.
Thanks, James. We usually say,
Yeah.
it feels so dirty coming out of your mouth, but such a respectable commentator. But we usually say goodbye to our fans by saying goodbye, Vankus.
Vankas.
Honor. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Right.
like...
Can you honor us with a goodbye, Vankas.
yeah,
like
of course.
Gunter.
For Gunter, for dear old Gunter, sure. Goodbye, Vankas.
Goodbye, Vankus.
Yes. Goodbye, Vankas.